During the most important presentation of my career, my mother-in-law walked to the front of the boardroom and deliberately erased my entire whiteboard strategy, while 12 executives watched in stunned silence. She smiled at me and said, "Maybe now you'll reconsider hiring qualified candidates like my son Marcus." 6 months later, she was begging me to drop the lawsuit that would cost her everything she owned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights in Conference Room A cast harsh shadows across the polished mahogany table as I positioned my final presentation materials for what would determine the future of Meridian Technologies' expansion into the Southeast market. 24 months of research, strategic planning, and relationship building had culminated in this moment when our board of directors would decide whether to approve my comprehensive market entry proposal or abandon the initiative that represented my greatest professional achievement to date. As Senior Vice President of Business Development, I had transformed what began as a speculative market analysis into a detailed operational blueprint that would establish Meridian Technologies as the dominant force in enterprise software solutions across Georgia, Florida, and the Carolinas. The presentation materials spread across the conference table represented hundreds of hours of analysis, competitor research, regulatory compliance studies, and financial projections that demonstrated both the opportunity and my capability to execute a complex multi-state expansion strategy. The whiteboard behind me displayed the culmination of this extensive preparation, a detailed timeline showing implementation phases, key milestone markers, resource allocation charts, and partnership integration schedules that would guide our execution over the following 18 months. Every element had been carefully calculated, cross-referenced with legal requirements, and validated through pilot programs that had already demonstrated measurable success in test markets. This visual summary would serve as the focal point for discussion and decision-making during the presentation that would shape the next chapter of both my career and the company's growth trajectory. Board members had been arriving throughout the morning, reviewing preliminary materials, and engaging in informal discussions about the strategic implications of expanding our operations beyond our established territory in the Northeast Corridor. Their questions during these preliminary conversations had focused on implementation logistics, competitive positioning, and risk mitigation strategies that I had anticipated and prepared to address through detailed supporting documentation. The atmosphere suggested cautious optimism tempered by recognition that success would require flawless execution and sustained commitment over multiple quarters. Chairman William Richardson had arrived precisely at 9:30, carrying the leather portfolio that contained his handwritten notes from previous strategic planning sessions and quarterly reviews. His methodical approach to evaluating new initiatives had earned respect throughout the technology sector, while his track record of identifying profitable expansion opportunities had generated consistent shareholder returns that exceeded industry benchmarks. His presence at this presentation represented both validation of the proposal's potential significance and recognition that approval would require meeting his exacting standards for strategic planning and operational readiness. Chief Financial Officer Patricia Walsh entered shortly afterward, accompanied by her assistant carrying financial modeling software that would enable real-time analysis of cash flow projections and return on investment calculations during the presentation. Her expertise in evaluating complex financial structures and identifying potential risk factors had prevented costly mistakes during previous expansion efforts, while her ability to translate technical analysis into strategic guidance had influenced numerous critical business decisions. Her participation would be essential for securing the financial backing necessary to implement the proposed expansion strategy. The remaining board members represented diverse expertise that would be crucial for comprehensive evaluation of the proposal. Technology Director James Morrison brought deep understanding of infrastructure requirements and systems integration challenges that would affect implementation timelines and resource allocation decisions. Marketing Director Susan Chen contributed insights about brand positioning and customer acquisition strategies that would determine market penetration rates and revenue generation potential. Operations Director Michael Torres provided perspective on logistics coordination and supply chain management that would affect service delivery capabilities and customer satisfaction metrics. As the formal presentation time approached, I conducted final reviews of supporting materials and backup documentation that would enable detailed responses to any questions or concerns that might arise during discussion periods. The comprehensive nature of the proposal required supporting evidence for numerous assumptions and projections, while the strategic implications demanded careful consideration of multiple scenarios and contingency planning approaches. This preparation reflected my understanding that board approval would require demonstrating both thorough analysis and practical implementation capability. The conference room atmosphere shifted as formal proceedings began, with board members taking their assigned seats and directing attention toward the presentation materials. Their expressions suggested professional curiosity combined with appropriate skepticism about the ambitious scope and aggressive timeline outlined in the proposal. This level of scrutiny was expected and appropriate for a decision that would commit significant company resources and establish precedent for future expansion initiatives. I had just begun explaining the market analysis methodology when the conference room door opened to admit someone whose presence immediately altered the dynamics of the entire meeting. Victoria Lawson, my mother-in-law, entered with the confident stride of someone who belonged in corporate boardrooms, carrying herself with the authority that had characterized her 40-year career in executive management positions. Her tailored business suit and professional demeanor suggested someone attending in an official capacity, though her appearance had not been anticipated or included in the meeting agenda. Victoria's relationship to me through marriage to her son David had created complex family dynamics that occasionally intersected with professional responsibilities, though we had maintained appropriate boundaries that prevented personal matters from affecting business relationships. Her successful career in corporate management had earned respect within business circles, while her expertise in strategic planning and organizational development had made her a sought-after consultant for companies facing complex growth challenges. However, her presence at this particular presentation represented an unexpected development that immediately raised questions about appropriate protocol and potential conflicts of interest. The board members acknowledged Victoria with polite recognition, though their expressions suggested uncertainty about the reason for her attendance and the appropriate way to proceed with scheduled presentation activities. Chairman Richardson glanced at his agenda materials as though seeking clarification about whether her participation had been planned, while other board members exchanged subtle looks that conveyed similar confusion about the proper response to this unscheduled appearance. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Victoria said with practiced diplomatic courtesy, though her tone suggested confidence that her presence would be welcomed despite the lack of prior arrangement. I was in the building for another meeting and thought I might observe this presentation, given my interest in expansion strategies and my familiarity with the Southeast market from previous consulting engagements. Her explanation sounded plausible on the surface, though several elements raised concerns about the actual circumstances surrounding her appearance. The timing coincided precisely with the beginning of my presentation, rather than representing casual interest in ongoing business activities. Her specific mention of Southeast market expertise seemed designed to establish relevance and credibility, rather than expressing general curiosity about company operations. The practiced nature of her explanation suggested preparation rather than spontaneous decision-making. Chairman Richardson nodded politely while maintaining the diplomatic neutrality that characterized his approach to managing complex interpersonal dynamics within business contexts. "Certainly, Victoria. Please take a seat, and we'll continue with Sarah's presentation." His response acknowledged her seniority and professional credentials, while avoiding any appearance of favoritism or inappropriate accommodation that might affect the integrity of the decision-making process. I resumed my presentation with professional composure, despite the unexpected development, focusing on the comprehensive market analysis that had identified specific opportunities within target geographic regions. The research methodology had incorporated multiple data sources, including competitor analysis, regulatory environment assessment, customer needs evaluation, and economic trend analysis that supported the strategic recommendations outlined in the proposal. Each component had been validated through independent research and cross-referenced with industry benchmarks to ensure accuracy and reliability of underlying assumptions. The competitive landscape analysis revealed significant opportunities for market penetration based on gaps in service delivery capabilities and limitations in existing provider offerings. Established competitors had failed to adapt their service models to address evolving customer requirements, while emerging companies lacked the resources and expertise necessary to provide comprehensive enterprise solutions. This created an optimal environment for Meridian Technologies to establish market leadership through superior service delivery and innovative technology integration. Customer research had identified specific pain points that our proposed solutions would address more effectively than current market alternatives. Enterprise clients expressed frustration with inflexible service packages, inadequate technical support, and limited customization options that failed to meet their operational requirements. Our service model had been designed specifically to address these concerns through modular offerings, dedicated support resources, and flexible implementation approaches that could be tailored to individual client needs. Regulatory analysis had confirmed that expansion into target markets would not encounter significant legal or compliance barriers that might delay implementation or increase operational costs. State and local requirements had been thoroughly researched and incorporated into operational planning, while relationships with regulatory authorities had been established to facilitate smooth approval processes and ongoing compliance monitoring. This preparation would enable rapid market entry without the delays that often characterized expansion initiatives. Financial projections incorporated conservative assumptions about market penetration rates and revenue generation timelines, while demonstrating substantial profit potential that would justify the required investment in infrastructure and personnel. Multiple scenario analyses had been conducted to evaluate sensitivity to various risk factors and market conditions, confirming that the proposed strategy would generate positive returns under most reasonable assumptions about economic conditions and competitive responses. As I progressed through the detailed financial analysis, Victoria's attention appeared focused on the whiteboard diagrams that illustrated implementation timelines and resource allocation strategies. Her expression suggested professional interest in the strategic planning approach, though her intense concentration on specific elements seemed to exceed casual observation of presentation materials. Board members continued to engage with questions and comments about various aspects of the proposal, demonstrating the kind of thorough evaluation that such significant decisions required. The presentation reached the critical juncture where board discussion would determine whether to proceed with detailed planning for implementation or defer the expansion initiative pending further analysis. This moment represented the culmination of extensive preparation and the beginning of either advancement toward execution or return to preliminary planning stages. Board members had begun formulating questions about specific implementation details when Victoria rose from her seat with purposeful determination. "Sarah, before the board makes any decisions about this expansion proposal, I think we should discuss the staffing requirements for the Southeast Regional Management position," Victoria announced with the authority of someone who believed she had standing to redirect the meeting agenda. "I understand that you haven't yet identified candidates for this crucial leadership role, and I happen to know someone whose qualifications would be perfect for this opportunity." Her intervention occurred at precisely the moment when board attention was focused on strategic decision-making rather than operational details, creating maximum disruption to the presentation flow and decision-making process. The timing suggested deliberate calculation rather than spontaneous suggestion, while her confident assumption of authority to introduce new agenda items revealed preparation that exceeded casual interest in the proceedings. Board members exchanged glances that conveyed surprise at this unexpected shift in meeting focus, though their diplomatic experience enabled them to maintain professional composure while evaluating the appropriate response to Victoria's suggestion. Chairman Richardson's expression indicated careful consideration of how to manage this development without compromising either meeting effectiveness or interpersonal relationships. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Victoria, while we appreciate your interest in our staffing decisions, the board needs to first determine whether to approve the expansion proposal before addressing implementation details like personnel selection, Chairman Richardson replied with tactful firmness that maintained meeting structure while acknowledging her suggestion. Sarah's presentation covers the strategic framework, and operational planning would follow approval of the overall initiative. Victoria's response revealed that her intervention had been carefully planned rather than representing spontaneous interest in helping with staffing decisions. "Actually, I think personnel selection is crucial to the viability of this entire proposal. Without qualified leadership in place, even the best strategic plan will fail during implementation." My son Marcus has exactly the combination of regional experience and technical expertise that would ensure success in this market. The revelation that her suggestion involved her own son transformed the nature of her intervention from professional consultation to personal advocacy that created obvious conflicts of interest. Board members' expressions shifted from diplomatic attention to concern about appropriate protocol for managing family relationship dynamics within business decision-making processes. The situation required delicate handling that would address the immediate disruption while establishing clear boundaries for future interactions. I maintained professional composure while recognizing that this moment would define both my credibility as a senior executive and my ability to manage complex interpersonal challenges without compromising business objectives. Victoria, I appreciate your concern about staffing, but personnel decisions for this expansion will be made through our established human resources processes that ensure fair evaluation of all qualified candidates. The board needs to focus on the strategic merits of the expansion proposal itself. My response attempted to redirect attention to appropriate decision-making processes while avoiding direct confrontation that might escalate tensions or create additional complications for board deliberations. The professional tone maintained respect for Victoria's experience while establishing clear boundaries about decision-making authority and appropriate procedures for personnel selection. Victoria's reaction exceeded what might have been expected from someone whose suggestion had been politely declined through reference to standard business procedures. Her expression hardened with determination that suggested this exchange was progressing according to predetermined plans rather than representing spontaneous disappointment about a rejected recommendation. Sarah, I think you're making a serious mistake by dismissing qualified candidates without proper consideration. Sometimes personal biases prevent objective evaluation of the best available talent. Her words carried implications that extended beyond simple disagreement about personnel procedures, suggesting underlying tensions that had not been apparent during previous interactions. The atmosphere in the conference room shifted as board members recognized that they were witnessing conflict that involved personal relationships intersecting with business decisions in potentially inappropriate ways. Their discomfort was evident despite their efforts to maintain diplomatic neutrality, while their attention remained focused on determining the appropriate response to this unexpected development. Before I could formulate a response that would address Victoria's implications without creating additional conflict, she moved toward the whiteboard with purposeful determination that immediately raised concerns about her intentions. The presentation materials displayed there represented hours of careful preparation and contained essential information for board evaluation of the expansion proposal. Perhaps I can help clarify the personnel requirements that Sarah seems to be overlooking. Victoria announced as she approached the detailed timeline and organizational charts that formed the centerpiece of the presentation. Her movement toward the whiteboard occurred with deliberate confidence that suggested she intended to modify or supplement the displayed information. What happened next exceeded every possible expectation for inappropriate behavior within a professional business context. Victoria picked up the whiteboard eraser and began systematically removing key components of the presentation materials that had been carefully arranged to support board decision-making. Strategic timeline markers disappeared first, followed by organizational structure diagrams, resource allocation charts, and partnership integration schedules that represented the foundation of the entire proposal. The silence in the conference room was absolute, as 12 senior executives watched Victoria methodically destroy presentation materials that had required months of preparation and represented thousands of hours of research and analysis. Board members sat frozen in apparent disbelief that such behavior was occurring during formal business proceedings, while their expressions conveyed shock at witnessing deliberate sabotage of professional presentation materials. I stood paralyzed by the unprecedented nature of what was happening, struggling to comprehend that someone would deliberately destroy presentation materials during a formal board meeting, while maintaining the composed demeanor of someone performing routine administrative tasks. The systematic nature of Victoria's actions revealed this was not emotional outburst, but calculated sabotage designed to undermine the presentation and force reconsideration of personnel decisions. When she had erased approximately half of the whiteboard content, Victoria turned back to the board with satisfied composure and delivered the statement that would define this moment and establish the foundation for everything that would follow. Maybe now you'll reconsider hiring qualified candidates like my son Marcus for positions that require real expertise and proven track record. The implications of her statement were clear to everyone present. This was not suggestion or recommendation but attempted coercion designed to force personnel decisions through destruction of presentation materials and disruption of formal business proceedings. The calculated nature of her actions revealed preparation and planning that extended far beyond spontaneous family advocacy, suggesting systematic approach to manipulating business decisions for personal benefit. Chairman Richardson recovered from initial shock to address the situation with the authority that his position required. Victoria, this behavior is completely inappropriate and unacceptable in any business context. I'm going to ask you to leave immediately while we determine how to proceed with this meeting. Victoria's response revealed that she had anticipated this reaction and prepared for potential consequences of her actions. William, I think you'll find that forcing qualified candidates out of consideration for key positions might create legal complications that the board should consider carefully. Discrimination in hiring practices can have serious consequences for companies that fail to follow proper procedures. Her veiled threats about legal action demonstrated that the destruction of presentation materials represented only the beginning of a calculated campaign designed to force compliance with her demands regarding her son's employment. The sophisticated nature of her approach suggested professional consultation and strategic planning that exceeded what might be expected from simple family advocacy. Board members' expressions conveyed recognition that they were confronting a situation that required careful management to avoid escalation, while protecting both the company's interests and the integrity of business decision-making processes. Their experience with complex corporate challenges enabled them to maintain professional composure while evaluating appropriate responses to unprecedented circumstances. As Victoria gathered her materials and prepared to leave the conference room, her final statement carried implications that would affect everything that followed. Sarah, I hope you'll reconsider your position about personnel decisions before this situation becomes more complicated for everyone involved. Sometimes the right choice requires looking beyond personal preferences to recognize objective qualifications. The door closed behind her with deliberate firmness that emphasized her confidence in the effectiveness of her tactics and her expectation that the desired outcome would be achieved through pressure and intimidation rather than professional evaluation processes. The conference room remained silent as board members processed what they had witnessed and considered appropriate responses to behavior that had no precedent in their collective experience. I stood before the damaged whiteboard, looking at the fragments of presentation materials that remained visible among the erased sections, realizing that this moment represented not just disruption of important business presentation, but declaration of war against my professional authority and personal integrity. Victoria Lawson had underestimated both my determination and my preparation for exactly this kind of challenge. What she could not have anticipated was that her actions had been witnessed by 12 senior executives, whose testimony would provide irrefutable evidence of deliberate sabotage and attempted coercion. What she did not understand was that my presentation materials existed in multiple formats and could be restored within minutes. What she failed to recognize was that her behavior had crossed lines that would have consequences extending far beyond the immediate disruption to this meeting. As I began the process of reconstructing the erased presentation materials, I realized that Victoria's calculated destruction of my work had actually provided something more valuable than she had taken away: clear evidence of her character and methods that would be essential for everything that would follow in the weeks and months ahead. The story of how I came to stand before that boardroom whiteboard began 12 years earlier, when I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, with a concentration in strategic management and organizational behavior. The business world in 2012 was experiencing rapid transformation as cloud computing and mobile technologies were reshaping how companies approached enterprise software solutions. Traditional providers were struggling to adapt their legacy systems to meet evolving client demands, while startup companies lacked the resources and credibility to compete for large enterprise contracts. This environment presented extraordinary opportunities for professionals who could bridge the gap between emerging technologies and established business practices. My thesis research had focused on market disruption patterns in enterprise software, analyzing how successful companies navigated technological transitions while maintaining competitive advantages and customer relationships. The findings revealed that success required combining technical innovation with deep understanding of client operations and strategic business objectives. My first position after graduation was as a business analyst at TechFlow Solutions, a mid-sized consulting firm that specialized in helping Fortune 500 companies evaluate and implement new technology platforms. The role provided extensive exposure to diverse industries and business models, while developing expertise in requirements analysis, vendor evaluation, and implementation project management. Client engagements ranged from manufacturing companies seeking supply chain optimization solutions to financial services firms upgrading their customer relationship management systems. The experience at TechFlow Solutions taught fundamental lessons about the complexity of enterprise decision-making and the critical importance of understanding both technical capabilities and organizational culture when recommending solutions. Successful implementations required more than identifying superior technology. They demanded comprehensive analysis of how new systems would integrate with existing processes, affect employee workflows, and support strategic business objectives. Failed projects invariably resulted from inadequate attention to these organizational factors, rather than technical limitations. After 3 years of increasingly complex consulting assignments, I recognized that my interests and capabilities aligned more closely with strategic business development than technical consulting. The transition to Meridian Technologies represented opportunity to apply analytical skills and industry knowledge within a focused organization rather than across multiple client engagements. Meridian had established strong market position in the Northeast Corridor through innovative enterprise software solutions that addressed specific pain points traditional providers had overlooked. The company's founding story reflected the entrepreneurial vision that would later influence my own approach to business development. Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Mitchell had identified market opportunities while serving as Chief Technology Officer at a larger enterprise software company that failed to respond effectively to changing customer requirements. His decision to establish Meridian Technologies stemmed from recognition that smaller, more agile organizations could deliver superior solutions by focusing on specific market segments and developing deep expertise in targeted application areas. Meridian's initial success resulted from strategic decision to concentrate on mid-market companies that were underserved by major enterprise software providers, but required more sophisticated solutions than small business applications could provide. This market segment appreciated personalized service and customized implementations, but lacked the internal technical resources to evaluate complex alternatives independently. Meridian's approach combined technical excellence with consultative relationship management that helped clients make informed decisions about technology investments. My initial role as senior business analyst involved supporting client implementations and conducting post-deployment evaluations that would inform product development and service delivery improvements. The position provided detailed understanding of client operations and decision-making processes while developing relationships with key personnel who influenced technology adoption decisions within their organizations. These interactions revealed patterns in client needs and preferences that would later inform strategic expansion planning. The progression from analyst to business development manager occurred through demonstrated ability to identify client expansion opportunities and develop proposals that addressed previously unrecognized requirements. Existing clients began requesting additional services and referrals to other companies, creating organic growth opportunities that established foundation for systematic business development activities. Success in these early initiatives demonstrated both analytical capabilities and relationship management skills that would be essential for senior leadership responsibilities. Promotion to Director of Business Development after 5 years reflected recognition of contributions to revenue growth and strategic planning initiatives. The expanded responsibilities included oversight of client relationship management, competitive analysis, market research, and strategic partnership development. The role required balancing immediate revenue opportunities with long-term market positioning considerations, while maintaining the consultative approach that differentiated Meridian from competitors focused primarily on product sales. The strategic planning process that would eventually lead to Southeast expansion began with comprehensive analysis of market saturation within our established Northeast territory. Client acquisition rates had stabilized as we approached optimal market penetration, while competitive pressure was increasing from both established providers upgrading their offerings and emerging companies attempting to replicate our success. Sustainable growth would require either significant market share gains through competitive displacement or expansion into new geographic markets with similar demographic and economic characteristics. Geographic expansion analysis revealed that Southeast markets offered optimal combination of growth potential, competitive positioning opportunities, and regulatory environments that would support successful market entry. The region's economic development was attracting technology companies and professional services firms that represented ideal client profiles, while established enterprise software providers had not adapted their service models to address specific regional requirements and preferences. State-by-state analysis of regulatory requirements, business development incentives, and competitive landscapes confirmed that Georgia, Florida, and the Carolinas represented the most promising opportunities for successful expansion. Each state offered economic development programs that would reduce initial operational costs, while their business-friendly regulatory environments would facilitate rapid establishment of local operations and client relationship development. The detailed market research required for comprehensive expansion planning involved extensive travel throughout the target region, conducting interviews with potential clients, analyzing competitor offerings, and evaluating infrastructure requirements for establishing regional operations. This research phase lasted 18 months and involved collaboration with local business development organizations, industry associations, and potential strategic partners who could facilitate market entry and client acquisition activities. Competitor analysis revealed significant gaps in service delivery capabilities that Meridian could address through our consultative approach and customized implementation methodology. Established providers were relying on standardized solutions that failed to address specific regional business practices and regulatory requirements, while smaller local companies lacked the technical expertise and financial resources to provide comprehensive enterprise solutions. Client research confirmed strong demand for the combination of technical sophistication and personalized service that had made Meridian successful in Northeast markets. Regional companies expressed frustration with rigid service packages, inadequate technical support, and limited customization options that failed to meet their operational requirements. These pain points represented exactly the market opportunities that Meridian's service model was designed to address. The financial analysis required for board presentation involved developing multiple scenario models that incorporated various assumptions about market penetration rates, revenue generation timelines, and operational cost structures. Conservative projections demonstrated positive returns within 18 months, while aggressive scenarios suggested potential for market leadership position within 3 years. Sensitivity analysis confirmed that success was achievable under most reasonable assumptions about economic conditions and competitive responses. Partnership development activities identified potential strategic alliances with regional consulting firms, technology vendors, and industry associations that could accelerate market entry and provide local expertise that would enhance service delivery capabilities. These partnerships would reduce initial operational risks while providing access to established networks and industry relationships that would facilitate client acquisition and retention. The operational planning phase required detailed analysis of staffing requirements, infrastructure needs, and service delivery processes that would support successful regional operations. Key personnel would need combination of technical expertise, regional market knowledge, and cultural familiarity that would enable effective client relationship development and project implementation. Recruitment strategies would emphasize identifying candidates with established local networks and proven track records in similar market development initiatives. Regulatory compliance analysis confirmed that expansion would not encounter significant legal barriers that might delay implementation or increase operational complexity. State and local requirements had been thoroughly researched and incorporated into operational planning, while relationships with regulatory authorities and industry associations had been established to facilitate smooth approval processes and ongoing compliance monitoring. Technology infrastructure requirements included establishing regional data centers, communication systems, and technical support capabilities that would enable seamless service delivery across multiple states while maintaining security standards and performance levels that enterprise clients required. These infrastructure investments represented significant capital commitments, but were essential for providing competitive service delivery capabilities. Marketing and business development strategies emphasized relationship-based approaches that would leverage Meridian's reputation and client testimonials from Northeast operations, while addressing specific regional market characteristics and competitive positioning requirements. Initial client acquisition would focus on companies with established relationships to Northeast organizations that could provide referrals and credibility endorsements. The comprehensive nature of this preparation reflected understanding that successful geographic expansion required more than simply replicating successful strategies in new markets. Regional variations in business practices, regulatory requirements, competitive landscapes, and customer expectations demanded careful adaptation of proven approaches while maintaining core competencies that had driven success in established markets. Risk mitigation strategies addressed potential challenges, including slower than projected market penetration, increased competitive responses, regulatory changes, and economic conditions that might affect client technology spending. Contingency plans included options for scaled implementation, strategic partnerships, and operational adjustments that would enable adaptation to changing circumstances while protecting core business operations. The integration of expansion planning with existing operations required careful coordination to ensure that regional growth would not compromise service delivery quality or client relationships in established markets. Resource allocation, personnel development, and operational systems would need enhancement to support expanded geographic scope while maintaining performance standards that had established Meridian's market reputation. Quality assurance processes would be particularly critical during expansion phase, as service delivery inconsistencies could compromise both regional success and company-wide reputation. Standardized procedures, training programs, and performance monitoring systems would ensure that regional operations maintained the consultative approach and technical excellence that differentiated Meridian from competitors. Client testimonial development involved documenting case studies and success stories that would provide credible evidence of Meridian's capabilities and results for prospective clients in target markets. These materials would be essential for establishing credibility and trust with organizations that had no previous experience with Meridian's services or personnel. The financial projections that would be presented to the board incorporated comprehensive analysis of revenue potential, operational costs, capital requirements, and return on investment calculations that would enable informed decision-making about resource allocation and strategic priorities. Multiple scenario analyses provided board members with realistic assessments of both opportunities and risks associated with expansion initiatives. This foundation of careful research, strategic planning, and operational preparation represented 2 years of dedicated effort that would enable Meridian Technologies to enter Southeast markets with confidence and competitive advantages. The comprehensive approach reflected lessons learned from successful Northeast operations while addressing specific challenges and opportunities that characterized regional expansion initiatives. Standing in that boardroom 12 years after graduation, looking at presentation materials that represented this extensive preparation and strategic vision, I understood that Victoria's destruction of the whiteboard was not simply personal attack but assault on everything that careful planning and professional dedication could achieve. Her actions revealed complete disregard for the systematic approach that had built Meridian Technologies into industry leader and positioned us for continued growth through strategic expansion. The foundation that had been built through years of client relationships, market research, strategic planning, and operational excellence could not be erased as easily as whiteboard diagrams. The credibility established through consistent performance, ethical business practices, and genuine commitment to client success represented assets that no single act of sabotage could destroy. Victoria's assumption that presentation destruction would force reconsideration of personnel decisions demonstrated fundamental misunderstanding of both professional decision-making processes and the strength of foundation that supported my leadership position within Meridian Technologies. The relationships built with board members through years of successful initiatives, the trust earned through consistent performance, and the documented results achieved through strategic planning would prove more resilient than she had anticipated. This was the legacy that would sustain me through the challenges ahead and ultimately enable triumph over attempts to undermine professional integrity through manipulation and sabotage. Victoria Lawson first entered my professional sphere 18 months before the board meeting incident, through what appeared to be a fortuitous networking opportunity at the annual Northeast Technology Leadership Conference held at the Boston Convention Center. The event brought together senior executives from major technology companies across the region to discuss emerging trends, strategic challenges, and collaborative opportunities that would shape the industry's future development. As Senior Vice President of Business Development at Meridian Technologies, my attendance at such conferences was essential for maintaining industry relationships and identifying potential partnership opportunities. The conference session on strategic expansion in emerging markets had concluded with the typical networking reception, where attendees continued discussions begun during formal presentations. These informal interactions often proved more valuable than structured sessions, as executives could explore specific challenges and opportunities relevant to their particular circumstances without the constraints of formal presentation formats. I was engaged in conversation with several colleagues about regulatory considerations affecting multi-state expansion, when Victoria approached with the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to corporate environments. Her introduction demonstrated sophisticated understanding of professional networking protocols and industry terminology that immediately established credibility within the group conversation. Victoria presented herself as a senior consultant specializing in organizational development and strategic planning for technology companies navigating complex growth transitions. Her business card identified her as principal consultant at Lawson Strategic Advisory, an independent consulting firm she had established after 25 years in executive management positions with various technology companies. The conversation quickly focused on the challenges facing mid-market technology companies seeking geographic expansion while maintaining operational excellence and client satisfaction standards. Victoria's contributions demonstrated deep familiarity with regulatory compliance requirements, market entry strategies, and organizational structure considerations that affect successful expansion initiatives. Her insights were particularly valuable regarding personnel development challenges and the importance of establishing strong regional leadership during market entry phases. Victoria's expertise appeared to complement precisely the areas where I was seeking additional perspective and validation for Meridian's Southeast expansion planning. Her experience with similar initiatives at other technology companies provided independent confirmation of strategic approaches I had developed through internal research and analysis. When she offered to review preliminary expansion plans and provide informal feedback based on her consulting experience, the offer seemed both professionally valuable and personally flattering. Our initial professional consultation occurred the following week at Victoria's downtown office, a sophisticated space that projected success and established credibility through careful attention to details that conveyed competence and trustworthiness. The office location in a prestigious business district, high-quality furnishings, and professional support staff all reinforced the impression that Victoria operated a successful consulting practice with substantial resources and established client relationships. The meeting began with Victoria's detailed review of preliminary market research and competitive analysis materials I had prepared for internal strategic planning discussions. Her questions demonstrated thorough understanding of market dynamics and strategic considerations, while revealing additional factors that merited investigation. Her suggestions for supplementary research areas and analytical frameworks provided valuable enhancement to the comprehensive approach I had been developing for board presentation purposes. Victoria's consulting methodology emphasized systematic evaluation of all variables that could affect expansion success, including factors that internal planning processes might overlook due to organizational assumptions or limited external perspective. Her analytical framework incorporated lessons learned from both successful expansion initiatives and failed attempts, providing balanced assessment of opportunities and risks that would be essential for board deliberations and implementation planning. The professional relationship that developed over the following months appeared to be mutually beneficial arrangement that enhanced both Meridian's expansion planning and Victoria's consulting practice. She gained detailed familiarity with innovative approaches to market development and client relationship management, while I benefited from her experience with regulatory navigation, personnel recruitment, and operational challenges that characterized geographic expansion initiatives. Victoria's integration into Meridian's strategic planning processes occurred gradually through increasingly frequent consultations about specific aspects of expansion preparation. Her insights about regulatory compliance requirements led to modifications in operational planning that would reduce implementation risks and accelerate market entry timelines. Her recommendations for personnel development programs addressed potential challenges in recruiting and retaining qualified regional staff with appropriate industry experience and local market knowledge. The depth of Victoria's involvement in expansion planning created familiarity with confidential strategic information that included detailed financial projections, competitive analysis, client acquisition strategies, and operational plans that represented significant competitive advantages. This information access reflected the trust that had developed through months of professional consultation and apparent alignment of interests regarding successful expansion implementation. Victoria's personal interest in Meridian's success seemed to extend beyond typical consultant-client relationships, suggesting genuine investment in outcomes rather than simple professional obligation to provide competent advisory services. She frequently referred to expansion planning as collaborative effort and expressed enthusiasm about participating in strategic initiative that could establish new standards for market development in the enterprise software sector. The progression from professional consultant to family connection occurred when Victoria's son David joined Meridian Technologies as a junior business analyst 6 months after our initial meeting. David's employment had resulted from standard recruitment processes that identified his qualifications as appropriate for entry-level position requiring analytical capabilities and interest in business development career path. His academic background in business administration and internship experience with technology companies suggested potential for growth within Meridian's organizational structure. David's integration into Meridian's workforce proceeded smoothly during his initial months, with performance evaluations indicating competent work quality and appropriate professional behavior. His analytical skills proved adequate for assigned responsibilities, while his eagerness to learn and contribute to team objectives created positive impressions among colleagues and supervisors. The professional relationship with his mother remained appropriately separated from his employment responsibilities and performance evaluation processes. Victoria's role as strategic consultant continued independent of her son's employment at Meridian, with clear boundaries maintained between family relationship dynamics and professional consultation activities. Her insights about expansion planning remained valuable for strategic development, while David's career progress followed normal patterns for junior-level employees, demonstrating adequate performance and professional development potential. The personal relationship between David and me developed naturally through workplace interactions and shared professional interests in business development and strategic planning. Our conversations during lunch meetings and after-work social activities revealed common perspectives about industry trends, career objectives, and approaches to client relationship management. The progression from professional colleagues to personal relationship occurred over several months, through gradual recognition of mutual attraction and compatibility. David's proposal of marriage 2 years after joining Meridian Technologies represented culmination of relationship that had developed through shared professional experiences and personal compatibility. The engagement announcement was received positively by Meridian colleagues, who had observed our professional collaboration and personal relationship development with approval and support. Victoria's response to the engagement reflected appropriate maternal satisfaction while maintaining professional boundaries regarding her consulting relationship with Meridian. The wedding planning process revealed additional aspects of Victoria's personality and approach to family relationships that had not been apparent during professional consultations. Her attention to social presentation and networking opportunities suggested strategic thinking that extended beyond immediate family celebration to broader business and social positioning considerations. Guest list recommendations emphasized individuals who could provide professional advantages or social connections that might benefit family members. Career advancement. Victoria's integration into family dynamics occurred with the same systematic approach that had characterized her professional consultation methodology. She demonstrated keen interest in understanding Meridian's organizational culture, strategic objectives, and personnel policies, while maintaining appropriate respect for boundaries between family relationships and business operations. Her questions about company policies and procedures appeared motivated by legitimate interest in understanding David's professional environment. The combination of strategic consulting relationship, family connection through marriage, and detailed familiarity with Meridian's expansion planning created unprecedented access to confidential information and decision-making processes. Victoria's insights into strategic planning, personnel policies, and organizational structure exceeded what would normally be available to external consultants or family members of junior-level employees. Her observations about Meridian's recruitment and promotion practices reflected detailed understanding of criteria used for personnel evaluation and advancement decisions. These insights enabled sophisticated analysis of how personnel decisions were made and which factors influenced assignment of leadership responsibilities for major initiatives like Southeast expansion. Her familiarity with board member perspectives and decision-making patterns provided strategic intelligence about how proposals were evaluated and approved. Victoria's suggestions about personnel development and organizational structure began to incorporate references to specific individuals whose qualifications might be appropriate for expanded responsibilities within growing organization. Her recommendations emphasized importance of promoting internal candidates who demonstrated loyalty, competence, and cultural alignment with Meridian's values and strategic objectives. The focus on internal promotion opportunities gradually concentrated on her son David's potential for advancement within business development organization. Victoria's analysis emphasized his growing familiarity with expansion planning, demonstrated analytical capabilities, and established relationships with key personnel who would be involved in implementation activities. Her arguments presented logical case for David's consideration when senior positions became available through organizational growth. David's performance evaluations during this period reflected steady professional development and increasing contributions to business development activities. His analytical work on market research and competitive analysis demonstrated capabilities that exceeded initial expectations for junior-level position. His collaboration with senior team members on strategic planning initiatives provided exposure to complex decision-making processes and established relationships that would be valuable for career advancement. The convergence of expansion planning approval and personnel selection for regional leadership positions created opportunity for Victoria to advocate more directly for David's advancement. Her strategic consultation had provided detailed understanding of position requirements, while her assessment of available candidates positioned David as optimal choice based on qualifications, cultural fit, and established organizational relationships. Victoria's advocacy for David's promotion intensified as board approval for expansion initiative approached final decision stages. Her arguments incorporated detailed analysis of leadership requirements and candidate evaluation criteria, while emphasizing potential risks associated with external recruitment for critical position. Her presentation emphasized advantages of promoting qualified internal candidate who possessed institutional knowledge and established stakeholder relationships. The systematic nature of Victoria's campaign for David's advancement reflected strategic thinking and careful preparation that exceeded typical parental advocacy for family members' career development. Her approach incorporated professional consultation authority, detailed knowledge of organizational structure, and sophisticated understanding of decision-making processes to create comprehensive case for specific personnel decision. This foundation of strategic positioning and systematic influence development would prove essential for understanding Victoria's response when her advocacy efforts encountered professional resistance based on objective evaluation criteria and established personnel policies. Her investment in outcome extended beyond simple family support to encompass strategic positioning that had been developing over months of careful preparation and relationship cultivation. The boardroom incident would represent culmination of this systematic approach to achieving desired personnel decision through combination of professional influence, family pressure, and ultimatum tactics designed to force compliance with her strategic objectives. Victoria's understanding of organizational dynamics and decision-making processes would inform her calculation that dramatic demonstration of displeasure would compel reconsideration of personnel evaluation and advancement decisions. However, her strategic preparation had not adequately considered the strength of professional standards and ethical boundaries that would ultimately determine response to attempted coercion and manipulation within business decision-making processes. The systematic erosion of Meridian Technologies' operational excellence began subtly during the months following Victoria's formal integration into our strategic planning processes through her consulting agreement and family connection. Her influence manifested initially through suggestions that appeared professionally sound and strategically beneficial, making the gradual compromises to establish standards nearly imperceptible until their cumulative effect became apparent through declining performance metrics and stakeholder satisfaction indicators. Victoria's first major intervention involved modification of our client relationship management protocols that had been refined over 8 years of successful operations. These procedures emphasized personalized service delivery, proactive communication with key stakeholders, and comprehensive documentation of client requirements and preferences that enabled consistent service quality regardless of which team members were assigned to specific accounts. The protocols had generated exceptional client retention rates and provided foundation for organic growth through referrals and expanded service agreements. Her proposed enhancements focused on efficiency improvements that would standardize client interactions and reduce the time investment required for relationship maintenance activities. Victoria argued that excessive personalization created operational inefficiencies and prevented optimal resource allocation across expanding client portfolios. Her recommendations included standardized communication templates, automated reporting systems, and reduced frequency of direct client contact that would enable account managers to handle larger client loads while maintaining adequate service standards. The modifications were implemented gradually through pilot programs that initially appeared successful based on short-term efficiency metrics. Account managers reported increased productivity as measured by number of client interactions completed per day, while standardized processes reduced preparation time for routine communications and status reports. However, these apparent improvements masked developing problems with client satisfaction that would not become evident until quarterly relationship assessment surveys revealed declining scores in areas that had previously represented Meridian's competitive advantages. Client feedback indicated growing dissatisfaction with perceived reduction in personal attention and responsiveness to specific requirements that differentiated their businesses from standard industry practices. Long-term clients who had appreciated Meridian's consultative approach began expressing concerns about increasingly generic service delivery that failed to acknowledge their unique operational challenges and strategic objectives. New clients showed higher attrition rates during initial service delivery periods, when personalized attention was most critical for establishing trust and demonstrating value proposition. Victoria's response to declining client satisfaction metrics demonstrated her systematic approach to controlling narrative interpretation and decision-making processes. She attributed the negative feedback to inevitable adjustment periods associated with operational improvements, and argued that client expectations needed modification to align with industry standards for service delivery efficiency. Her analysis emphasized cost savings achieved through standardization while minimizing significance of relationship quality indicators that had previously driven business development success. The personnel evaluation processes that had enabled Meridian to recruit and retain exceptional talent underwent similar systematic modification under Victoria's influence. Original evaluation criteria emphasized collaborative skills, client service orientation, strategic thinking capability, and cultural alignment with Meridian's values regarding excellence and integrity. These standards had created workforce characterized by professional competence, ethical behavior, and genuine commitment to client success that distinguished Meridian from competitors focused primarily on technical capabilities. Victoria's recommended improvements to personnel evaluation emphasized quantifiable productivity metrics, standardized performance indicators, and reduced emphasis on subjective factors like cultural fit and collaborative effectiveness. She argued that objective measurement systems would eliminate bias and ensure that advancement decisions reflected demonstrable contributions to organizational objectives. Her framework prioritized individual achievement over team collaboration and emphasized short-term results over long-term relationship building and strategic thinking. The implementation of modified personnel evaluation criteria created significant changes in organizational culture and employee motivation patterns. Staff members began focusing on activities that generated measurable short-term results, rather than investing in relationship development and strategic initiatives that provided long-term benefits but were difficult to quantify using standardized metrics. Collaborative problem-solving decreased as individuals competed for recognition through individual achievement rather than team success. Senior staff members with extensive experience and established client relationships found their contributions undervalued by evaluation systems that emphasized quantifiable metrics over wisdom, judgment, and relationship management capabilities that had driven Meridian's success. Several longtime employees expressed concern about cultural changes and began exploring alternative employment opportunities with organizations that maintained more traditional approaches to professional development and client service excellence. Victoria's influence on vendor relationships and supply chain management represented another area where systematic changes compromised established standards while generating apparent short-term benefits. Meridian had developed preferred vendor relationships based on service quality, reliability, technical competence, and alignment with ethical business practices that reflected our organizational values. These relationships had enabled superior service delivery through access to specialized expertise and priority support during critical implementation periods. Her vendor evaluation recommendations emphasized cost reduction as primary selection criterion, while de-emphasizing service quality factors that had been central to previous procurement decisions. Victoria argued that competitive bidding processes focusing on price optimization would reduce operational costs and improve profit margins without significantly affecting service delivery capabilities. Her analysis suggested that quality differences between vendors were minimal, and that cost savings would enable investment in other areas that would provide greater strategic value. The transition to cost-focused vendor selection created immediate reductions in procurement expenses that appeared to validate Victoria's strategic recommendations. Quarterly financial reports showed improved profit margins attributable to reduced vendor costs, while service delivery metrics remained stable during initial implementation periods. However, these apparent successes masked developing problems with service reliability and technical support that would affect client satisfaction and project implementation effectiveness. Quality issues with new vendor relationships became apparent through increased frequency of service interruptions, longer response times for technical support requests, and higher error rates in deliverable components that required additional quality assurance resources. Project implementation schedules experienced delays as team members invested additional time in vendor coordination and problem resolution activities that had been minimal with previous service providers. Client satisfaction began declining as service delivery inconsistencies affected their operational objectives and strategic timeline requirements. The financial management practices that had enabled Meridian to maintain conservative fiscal discipline while funding strategic growth initiatives were modified under Victoria's influence to emphasize aggressive cost reduction and profit optimization strategies. Original financial policies emphasized sustainable growth, adequate reserve funding for unexpected challenges, and strategic investment in personnel development and technology infrastructure that would support long-term competitive positioning. Victoria's financial optimization recommendations focused on reducing operational expenses through workforce reduction, benefits modification, and capital expenditure deferrals that would improve short-term profitability metrics. Her analysis argued that Meridian's conservative financial practices represented missed opportunities for shareholder value creation and competitive investment that could accelerate market expansion and revenue growth. Her proposals included personnel reductions in support functions, modification of employee benefits packages, and postponement of technology infrastructure upgrades. The implementation of aggressive cost reduction strategies generated immediate improvements in profit margins that appear to demonstrate superior financial management and strategic decision-making. Quarterly earnings reports showed increased profitability attributable to reduced operational expenses, while maintained revenue levels suggested that service delivery capabilities had not been compromised by organizational changes. These results provided justification for continuing and expanding cost optimization initiatives that Victoria presented as evidence of her strategic consulting effectiveness. However, the underlying organizational capabilities that had enabled Meridian's success were being systematically weakened through resource reduction and strategic investment deferrals. Personnel reductions affected service delivery quality and responsiveness, as remaining staff members struggled to maintain previous performance standards with reduced support resources. Deferred technology investments created competitive vulnerabilities, as clients began comparing Meridian's capabilities with competitors who continued investing in infrastructure improvements and service enhancement. The quality assurance processes that had ensured consistent service delivery and protected Meridian's reputation for excellence were compromised through resource allocation changes and modified performance standards. Original quality control procedures emphasized comprehensive testing, multiple review stages, and systematic documentation that enabled identification and correction of potential problems before they affected client operations. These procedures had prevented service delivery failures and maintained the reliability that distinguished Meridian from competitors with less rigorous operational standards. Victoria's efficiency improvements to quality assurance focused on reducing review requirements, streamlining approval processes, and eliminating redundant checking procedures that she characterized as bureaucratic obstacles to productivity optimization. Her recommendations emphasized individual accountability over systematic verification processes and argued that experienced personnel could maintain quality standards without extensive oversight and documentation requirements. The modified quality assurance procedures initially appeared successful based on reduced processing time for project deliverables and increased throughput metrics that suggested improved operational efficiency. Project completion rates increased as review requirements were reduced, while personnel productivity showed improvement as measured by output volume and deadline adherence. These apparent successes provided justification for further streamlining initiatives that Victoria presented as evidence of superior operational management. Service delivery problems that had been prevented by comprehensive quality assurance procedures began appearing in client implementations as systematic verification processes were reduced. Error rates increased as individual accountability proved insufficient replacement for systematic review and documentation requirements. Client complaints about service quality began increasing as problems that would have been identified and corrected through original quality control procedures reached customer environments and affected their operational effectiveness. The strategic planning processes that had enabled Meridian to anticipate market changes and adapt competitive positioning accordingly were modified under Victoria's influence to emphasize short-term tactical responses over long-term strategic thinking. Original planning methodologies incorporated comprehensive market analysis, competitive intelligence gathering, and scenario planning that enabled proactive positioning for emerging opportunities and potential challenges. These processes had enabled successful navigation of economic fluctuations and competitive pressures that had affected less prepared organizations. Victoria's strategic planning improvements focused on rapid response capabilities and tactical flexibility that would enable quick adaptation to immediate market conditions without extensive analysis and planning overhead. Her approach emphasized reactive positioning based on competitive moves and customer feedback, rather than proactive strategic development based on comprehensive environmental analysis. She argued that excessive planning created organizational rigidity and prevented optimal response to rapidly changing market conditions. The implementation of reactive strategic planning appeared initially successful as Meridian demonstrated increased responsiveness to immediate market opportunities and competitive challenges. Decision-making timelines were reduced as comprehensive analysis requirements were eliminated, while tactical flexibility enabled rapid adjustment to changing customer requirements and competitive positioning moves. These apparent improvements provided evidence supporting Victoria's arguments about superior strategic management approaches. However, the systematic strategic thinking that had enabled Meridian to maintain competitive advantages and identify emerging opportunities before competitors was being compromised through reduced analytical rigor and shortened planning horizons. Market positioning decisions began reflecting reactive responses to immediate pressures rather than proactive strategic development based on comprehensive environmental understanding. Competitive advantages that had been carefully developed through strategic planning began eroding as tactical responses proved insufficient for maintaining market leadership position. The cumulative effect of these systematic modifications to operational excellence, personnel management, vendor relationships, financial practices, quality assurance, and strategic planning created gradual degradation in organizational capabilities that had enabled Meridian's success. Each individual change appeared reasonable and potentially beneficial based on short-term metrics, while their combined impact on fundamental organizational strengths remained largely invisible until performance problems began affecting client relationships and competitive positioning. Victoria's systematic approach to organizational modification demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how to compromise operational excellence through changes that appeared professionally justified, while actually undermining the foundation of competitive advantages. Her influence had been carefully applied to avoid triggering immediate recognition of problems, while steadily weakening the capabilities that had distinguished Meridian from competitors and enabled sustained success in challenging market conditions. The recognition that these systematic changes were compromising rather than enhancing organizational effectiveness would prove crucial for understanding the broader pattern of Victoria's influence and the strategic nature of her campaign to control personnel decisions and organizational direction. Her board meeting intervention represented escalation of influence tactics that had been developing through months of systematic preparation and positioning for ultimate control over key strategic decisions. The moment of devastating clarity about Victoria's true intentions occurred during a quarterly performance review meeting 3 weeks before the board presentation incident. The conference room atmosphere had been tense, as department heads presented increasingly troubling metrics that revealed the cumulative impact of organizational changes implemented over the previous 18 months. Client satisfaction scores had declined across all service categories, employee retention rates had reached concerning levels, and competitive positioning indicators suggested that Meridian was losing market share to rivals who had maintained traditional operational approaches. As Senior Vice President of Business Development, I had prepared a comprehensive analysis of performance degradation patterns that traced declining results to specific policy modifications and procedural changes that had been implemented based on strategic consultation recommendations. The documentation revealed systematic correlation between operational modifications and negative performance outcomes across multiple organizational functions. Each change had generated short-term efficiency gains while compromising fundamental capabilities that had enabled sustained competitive advantages. The presentation of performance analysis results created uncomfortable recognition among senior leadership that strategic consultation had produced contrary outcomes to intended improvements. Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Mitchell expressed concern about organizational changes that appeared to be undermining rather than enhancing competitive positioning and operational effectiveness. His questions about consultation methodology and implementation oversight revealed growing skepticism about strategic recommendations that had initially appeared professionally sound and potentially beneficial. Victoria's response to performance concerns demonstrated the sophisticated nature of her strategic positioning and influence tactics. Rather than acknowledging potential problems with consultation recommendations, she redirected focus toward personnel evaluation and advancement decisions that she characterized as critical factors affecting organizational performance and strategic positioning. Her analysis suggested that declining performance resulted from inadequate leadership development and missed opportunities to promote qualified internal candidates to positions requiring enhanced strategic oversight. The personnel discussion that followed revealed Victoria's systematic campaign to position her son David for advancement to regional management responsibilities within the Southeast Expansion Initiative. Her arguments incorporated detailed analysis of leadership requirements, candidate evaluation criteria, and organizational development needs that appeared professionally comprehensive and strategically justified. However, the timing of this discussion immediately following presentation of performance problems suggested strategic coordination designed to leverage organizational concerns for personal advancement objectives. Victoria's case for David's promotion emphasized his growing familiarity with expansion planning, demonstrated analytical capabilities, and established relationships with key personnel who would be involved in implementation activities. She presented comparative analysis of available candidates that highlighted David's qualifications while minimizing the experience and expertise of external candidates who had been identified through professional recruitment processes. Her presentation suggested that internal promotion would provide stability and continuity that external recruitment could not guarantee. The systematic nature of Victoria's advocacy exceeded normal professional consultation or parental support for family member career development. Her preparation included detailed knowledge of personnel policies, advancement criteria, and decision-making processes that reflected months of strategic intelligence gathering and relationship cultivation. The comprehensiveness of her presentation suggested advanced planning that had anticipated this opportunity to leverage organizational performance concerns for personnel advancement objectives. My response to Victoria's personnel recommendations reflected professional evaluation standards and ethical obligations that prevented favoritism or inappropriate consideration of family relationships in advancement decisions. The regional management position required extensive experience in market development, proven leadership capabilities, and established credibility within industry networks that would facilitate successful client relationship development and partnership establishment. These requirements exceeded David's current qualifications and experience level, despite his competent performance in analytical support roles. The explanation of objective evaluation criteria and advancement requirements triggered Victoria's transition from professional consultation to personal confrontation that revealed the underlying motivations driving her systematic influence campaign. Her response demonstrated sophisticated understanding of organizational dynamics and decision-making processes, while revealing expectations that professional relationships and family connections would override established personnel policies and evaluation standards. Victoria's initial reaction emphasized the value of internal promotion over external recruitment, while questioning the objectivity of evaluation processes that failed to recognize David's potential contributions to organizational success. Her argument suggested that traditional advancement criteria represented bureaucratic obstacles to optimal personnel decisions, and that innovative approaches to talent development would better serve strategic objectives. However, the intensity of her response revealed personal investment that exceeded professional consultation responsibilities. The escalation to personal accusations occurred when objective evaluation standards could not be compromised through professional argumentation or strategic analysis. Victoria suggested that personnel decisions were being influenced by personal biases and discriminatory practices that prevented fair consideration of qualified candidates. Her allegations implied that evaluation processes were compromised by subjective factors, rather than reflecting systematic application of established criteria and advancement requirements. The sophistication of Victoria's accusations demonstrated strategic preparation and understanding of legal vulnerabilities that could create pressure for compliance with personnel advancement demands. Her references to discrimination prevention and equal opportunity requirements suggested consultation with legal advisors and systematic development of arguments that could support formal complaints or legal challenges if personnel decisions continued to exclude David from advancement opportunities. The recognition that Victoria's systematic influence campaign had been designed to create legal and professional pressure for specific personnel decisions transformed understanding of her consultation relationship and strategic positioning activities. The months of operational modifications, policy changes, and procedural adjustments had created organizational vulnerabilities that could be exploited through allegations of improper personnel practices and discriminatory advancement decisions. The comprehensive nature of Victoria's preparation became apparent through her detailed knowledge of personnel evaluation documentation, advancement decision rationales, and organizational policies that governed recruitment and promotion processes. Her familiarity with confidential information exceeded what would be available through normal consultation relationships, and suggested systematic intelligence gathering designed to support legal challenges or professional complaints about personnel management practices. Victoria's strategic positioning had created multiple pressure points that could be activated simultaneously to force compliance with personnel advancement demands. The operational changes that had compromised organizational effectiveness could be attributed to inadequate leadership and missed opportunities for internal talent development. The declining performance metrics could support arguments about need for enhanced personnel management and strategic oversight capabilities. The legal vulnerabilities created through discrimination allegations could generate regulatory scrutiny and compliance requirements. The realization that organizational changes had been systematically designed to create vulnerabilities rather than enhance capabilities represented profound betrayal of professional trust and consultation relationships. Victoria had used legitimate consulting expertise to compromise organizational effectiveness while positioning herself to exploit resulting problems for personal advancement objectives. The strategic sophistication demonstrated professional-level planning and execution that exceeded typical manipulation tactics. The immediate consequences of recognizing Victoria's strategic manipulation included understanding that resistance to personnel advancement demands would trigger escalation of pressure tactics and potential legal challenges that could affect both personal and professional circumstances. The comprehensive nature of her preparation suggested that contingency plans existed for various responses to personnel decisions, and that compliance represented the path of least resistance for organizational stability. However, the ethical implications of yielding to manipulation and coercion exceeded practical considerations about avoiding conflict and potential legal complications. The personnel advancement decision involved responsibilities for regional operations that would affect client relationships, competitive positioning, and strategic success of expansion initiative. Compromising evaluation standards to accommodate family relationships and manipulation tactics would establish precedent that could undermine organizational integrity and professional credibility. The consultation relationship that had provided Victoria with systematic access to confidential information and strategic planning processes had created unprecedented opportunity for influence and manipulation that exceeded normal family relationship dynamics or professional service arrangements. Her integration into multiple organizational functions had enabled comprehensive understanding of vulnerabilities and strategic positioning that could be exploited for personal objectives. The strategic nature of Victoria's campaign revealed systematic thinking and professional-level execution that demonstrated her capabilities as management consultant while exposing her willingness to compromise client interests for personal benefit. The operational modifications that had appeared to enhance organizational effectiveness had actually created dependencies and vulnerabilities that could be leveraged for personnel advancement and strategic control objectives. The recognition that months of consultation and strategic planning had been compromised by personal agenda and manipulation tactics required fundamental reassessment of organizational decisions and strategic direction. The expansion initiative that represented culmination of strategic planning and competitive positioning had been influenced by recommendations designed to create opportunities for personnel advancement rather than optimize operational effectiveness and market success. The legal and professional vulnerabilities created through Victoria's systematic influence campaign represented significant challenges that required careful navigation to avoid escalation while maintaining organizational integrity and professional standards. Her preparation suggested that resistance to personnel demands would trigger coordinated response designed to force compliance through multiple pressure points and potential legal challenges. The isolation created through Victoria's systematic influence and positioning activities had eliminated most sources of independent advice and strategic perspective within organizational leadership. Her consultation relationship had provided access to senior management, while her family connection had created personal loyalties and obligations that complicated professional decision-making processes. The comprehensive nature of her influence had created an environment where resistance to personnel advancement would be characterized as personal animosity rather than professional evaluation. The understanding that Victoria's board meeting intervention had been carefully planned as escalation tactic rather than spontaneous emotional response provided crucial insight into her strategic thinking and preparation for forcing personnel decisions. The systematic nature of her influence campaign suggested that presentation sabotage represented calculated pressure designed to create public evidence of conflict that could support discrimination allegations and legal challenges. The recognition that resistance to manipulation would require systematic counter-strategy and comprehensive documentation of decision-making rationales and evaluation processes became essential for protecting both personal and organizational interests. Victoria's professional expertise in strategic preparation exceeded typical family relationship dynamics and required response that addressed her capabilities while maintaining ethical standards and professional integrity. This moment of complete understanding about Victoria's systematic manipulation and strategic objectives marked the transition from unknowing victim of professional consultation fraud to conscious opponent of calculated coercion designed to compromise organizational effectiveness for personal advancement goals. The aftermath of recognizing Victoria's systematic manipulation created a period of professional isolation that revealed the comprehensive nature of her influence campaign and the strategic positioning she had achieved throughout Meridian Technologies' organizational structure. The weeks following our confrontation about David's advancement demonstrated how effectively she had cultivated relationships and established credibility within multiple departments and management levels that would be crucial for any resistance to her personnel objectives. Victoria's response to my refusal to compromise evaluation standards began with subtle modifications to existing consultation arrangements that gradually reduced my access to strategic information and decision-making processes. Meeting invitations that had previously included my participation were revised to exclude business development perspectives, while strategic planning discussions occurred without input from the department most directly affected by expansion initiatives. The isolation occurred systematically rather than through obvious exclusion that might generate questions about consultation methodology or organizational effectiveness. The modification of information access patterns created practical challenges for maintaining oversight of strategic planning and competitive positioning activities that fell within my responsibilities as Senior Vice President of Business Development. Critical intelligence about market conditions, competitive developments, and regulatory changes that would affect expansion planning began reaching me through secondary sources rather than direct participation in strategic analysis activities. This information delay compromised my ability to provide timely input on strategic decisions and maintain effective oversight of business development initiatives. Victoria's systematic cultivation of relationships with other senior managers had created a network of supporters who viewed her strategic consultation as essential for organizational success and competitive positioning. Her professional expertise and consulting credentials had established credibility that enabled her perspectives to carry significant weight in strategic discussions and operational planning activities. The months of successful positioning had created presumption that her recommendations represented optimal approaches to complex business challenges. The erosion of my strategic influence occurred through modifications to consultation processes that appeared professionally reasonable while systematically reducing my input on critical decisions. Strategic planning meetings were restructured to emphasize operational efficiency over comprehensive analysis, with reduced participation from departmental representatives who might question recommendations or suggest alternative approaches. These changes were presented as improvements to decision-making effectiveness rather than attempts to limit perspectives that might challenge consultation authority. Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Mitchell's growing reliance on Victoria's strategic consultation reflected her successful positioning as indispensable advisor, whose expertise exceeded what was available through internal management capabilities. Her analysis of organizational performance problems and strategic positioning challenges had provided compelling explanations for competitive pressures and operational difficulties that senior management was experiencing. The comprehensive nature of her consultation had created dependency that would be difficult to replace through alternative advisory relationships. The board of directors' confidence in Victoria's strategic recommendations had been established through months of successful consultation and apparent improvements in operational efficiency and strategic positioning. Her professional credentials and documented expertise provided credibility that enabled her perspectives to influence board deliberations and strategic decision-making processes. The systematic nature of her influence had created presumption that her continued consultation was essential for successful expansion initiative and competitive positioning maintenance. Victoria's strategic positioning had created an environment where resistance to her personnel recommendations would be interpreted as personal animosity rather than professional evaluation, based on objective criteria and advancement requirements. Her successful cultivation of relationships throughout organizational structure had established narrative that questioning her judgment represented inappropriate interference with strategic consultation rather than legitimate exercise of personnel management responsibilities. The isolation from strategic decision-making processes was accompanied by subtle modifications to operational authority that reduced my effectiveness in managing business development activities and maintaining client relationships. Budget approval processes that had previously operated through streamlined procedures began requiring additional consultation and approval stages that delayed critical initiatives and compromised competitive responsiveness. Project authorization that had been handled through established delegation was modified to require oversight from strategic consultation that introduced delays and procedural complications. Client relationship management activities that had been central to my responsibilities were subjected to increased oversight and consultation requirements that reduced my ability to respond effectively to customer needs and competitive challenges. Strategic account management decisions that had previously been made through direct client consultation were modified to require approval from Victoria's strategic analysis and recommendation processes. These changes compromised the personal relationships and responsive service delivery that had distinguished Meridian's competitive positioning. The systematic reduction of operational authority occurred through procedural modifications that appeared to enhance strategic coordination, while actually limiting my ability to fulfill responsibilities and maintain performance standards. Decision-making processes that had enabled rapid response to market opportunities and competitive challenges were modified to require consultation approval that introduced delays and reduced flexibility. The procedural changes were presented as improvements to strategic alignment rather than attempts to compromise operational effectiveness. Victoria's influence on personnel evaluation processes affecting my direct reports created additional pressure points that could be activated to support her strategic objectives. Performance assessment criteria that had emphasized collaborative effectiveness and strategic thinking were modified to prioritize metrics that aligned with consultation recommendations and operational modifications. Staff members began adapting their activities to satisfy modified evaluation standards that emphasized short-term productivity over strategic relationship building and long-term competitive positioning. The recognition that organizational changes had been designed to create dependency on strategic consultation rather than enhance competitive capabilities transformed understanding of the comprehensive nature of Victoria's influence campaign. The operational modifications that had initially appeared to improve efficiency had actually compromised fundamental capabilities while creating vulnerabilities that could be exploited for strategic control and personnel advancement objectives. Legal consultation regarding potential responses to Victoria's discrimination allegations revealed the sophisticated nature of her strategic preparation and the significant challenges that would be required to defend personnel evaluation processes. Her documentation of consultation activities and organizational involvement had created comprehensive record of participation that could support arguments about professional exclusion and discriminatory treatment. The legal vulnerabilities extended beyond simple personnel decisions to encompass broader questions about consultation relationships and strategic planning processes. The attorney's analysis of Victoria's strategic positioning revealed professional-level sophistication that exceeded typical family relationship advocacy or personal advancement objectives. Her systematic creation of legal vulnerabilities through consultation access and organizational involvement had established multiple pressure points that could be activated simultaneously to force compliance with personnel advancement demands. The comprehensive nature of her preparation suggested contingency planning that had anticipated various responses to personnel decisions. Employment law considerations regarding family relationships and potential conflicts of interest created additional complications for defending personnel evaluation processes. Victoria's dual role as strategic consultant and family member had created unique circumstances that would require careful navigation to avoid regulatory scrutiny and compliance challenges. The legal analysis suggested that defensive strategies would need to address both professional consultation relationships and family dynamics that could affect personnel decision rationales. The financial implications of extended legal challenges and regulatory compliance requirements represented significant threats to organizational stability and strategic positioning that Victoria could exploit for personnel advancement objectives. Legal defense costs would consume resources that had been allocated for expansion initiatives, while regulatory scrutiny could delay implementation and compromise competitive positioning. The systematic nature of her pressure tactics demonstrated understanding of organizational vulnerabilities and strategic priorities. Human resources consultation regarding personnel evaluation documentation revealed systematic gaps in performance assessment records that could be exploited to support discrimination allegations. The informal nature of advancement decision-making processes had relied on established practices and professional judgment, rather than comprehensive documentation that would be required to defend evaluation criteria and advancement requirements. The documentation deficiencies created vulnerabilities that Victoria's legal preparation could exploit effectively. The recognition that months of strategic consultation had been designed to create documentation gaps and procedural vulnerabilities, rather than enhance organizational effectiveness, represented profound betrayal of professional trust and consultation relationships. Victoria's systematic creation of legal exposure while positioning herself as indispensable strategic advisor demonstrated calculated manipulation that exceeded professional consultation standards and ethical business practices. Insurance coverage analysis regarding potential discrimination claims and legal challenges revealed limitations in protection that would require significant organizational resources to address extended litigation and regulatory compliance requirements. The financial exposure extended beyond immediate legal defense costs to encompass operational disruption, competitive positioning damage, and strategic initiative delays that could affect long-term organizational viability and market positioning success. The comprehensive nature of Victoria's strategic pressure campaign had created a situation where resistance to personnel advancement demands would trigger coordinated response designed to force compliance through multiple simultaneous challenges to organizational stability and strategic positioning. Her professional expertise and systematic preparation had established a position of strategic advantage that would be difficult to counter through traditional personnel management approaches or organizational procedures. Board member consultation regarding strategic consultation relationships and personnel advancement decisions revealed complex dynamics that complicated resistance to Victoria's influence in personnel recommendations. Her established credibility and documented contributions to strategic planning had created presumption that her perspectives represented optimal approaches to organizational challenges and competitive positioning requirements. Questioning her judgment would require comprehensive evidence of strategic manipulation and systematic organizational compromise. The isolation from board-level strategic discussions and decision-making processes had reduced my ability to provide alternative perspectives on consultation effectiveness and strategic positioning outcomes. Victoria's systematic cultivation of board relationships and strategic influence had established her consultation as essential for successful expansion initiative and competitive positioning maintenance. Challenging her authority would require overcoming presumption of professional competence and strategic value. The recognition that board presentation of expansion initiative would represent critical opportunity to demonstrate organizational capabilities and strategic positioning while potentially exposing the systematic nature of Victoria's influence campaign created both opportunity and significant risk. The presentation would occur under circumstances where Victoria's strategic positioning and influence could be activated to support her personnel advancement objectives through disruption of strategic decision-making processes. The understanding that Victoria's comprehensive preparation and strategic positioning had created an environment where traditional resistance to manipulation and coercion would be insufficient to protect organizational integrity and professional evaluation standards became foundation for recognizing that defensive strategies would require equally systematic preparation and documentation to counter her influence campaign effectively. This period of isolation and strategic pressure revealed the sophisticated nature of professional manipulation that could occur within legitimate consultation relationships, while demonstrating the importance of maintaining systematic documentation and procedural integrity that would be essential for defending organizational effectiveness against calculated coercion designed to compromise personnel evaluation standards for personal advancement objectives. The discovery that would transform my understanding of the entire situation occurred during what appeared to be routine preparation for the Southeast Expansion Board presentation. While organizing supporting documentation in my office filing system, I encountered a sealed envelope marked Strategic Contingency Materials, Sarah Mitchell, that had been secured within a locked drawer that I accessed infrequently. The envelope's presence was unexpected, as I had no memory of creating or storing such materials, and the formal labeling suggested systematic preparation rather than casual document storage. The envelope contained comprehensive documentation that revealed Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Mitchell had been conducting parallel analysis of organizational changes and performance degradation patterns that mirrored my own concerns about operational modifications implemented through Victoria's strategic consultation. His investigation had been conducted discreetly over the preceding 6 months, utilizing independent analysis and external consultation to validate concerns about declining competitive positioning and organizational effectiveness metrics. Jonathan's documentation included detailed performance analysis that traced systematic correlation between Victoria's consultation recommendations and negative organizational outcomes across multiple functional areas. His research had identified patterns of strategic modification that appeared designed to create dependencies and vulnerabilities rather than enhance competitive capabilities. The analysis demonstrated professional-level sophistication in recognizing manipulation tactics and strategic positioning designed to compromise organizational effectiveness for personal objectives. The investigative materials revealed that Jonathan had become suspicious of Victoria's consultation methodology following quarterly board reviews that showed declining performance metrics, despite implementation of strategic recommendations that should have improved competitive positioning and operational efficiency. His initial concerns had focused on potential incompetence or strategic miscalculation, but systematic analysis had revealed patterns that suggested deliberate manipulation rather than professional error or inadequate consultation expertise. Independent verification of Victoria's professional credentials and consulting track record had been conducted through discrete inquiries within industry networks and professional associations that maintained records of strategic consultation activities. The research had revealed significant discrepancies between her claimed expertise and documented performance outcomes at previous client organizations. Several former clients had experienced similar patterns of declining performance following implementation of her strategic recommendations. The documentation included testimonials from executives at other technology companies who had terminated consultation relationships with Victoria after recognizing systematic manipulation and strategic positioning designed to create dependencies rather than enhance organizational capabilities. These testimonials provided detailed accounts of operational modifications that had compromised competitive advantages while creating vulnerabilities that could be exploited for strategic control and personnel advancement objectives. Legal analysis conducted by independent employment law specialists had identified systematic patterns in Victoria's approach to organizational modification that created legal vulnerabilities and discrimination allegations that could be activated to pressure personnel advancement decisions. Her consultation methodology appeared designed to establish multiple pressure points that could be used simultaneously to force compliance with strategic objectives that extended beyond legitimate consultation activities. The investigative materials revealed that Jonathan had been coordinating with board members to develop defensive strategies that would protect organizational integrity while addressing legal vulnerabilities created through Victoria's systematic influence campaign. This coordination had been conducted through discreet communications that avoided triggering escalation of pressure tactics while enabling comprehensive preparation for anticipated confrontation over personnel advancement decisions. Board member consultation regarding strategic positioning and personnel evaluation processes had confirmed concerns about Victoria's systematic influence and manipulation tactics that exceeded appropriate consultation boundaries. Several board members had expressed unease about consultation arrangements that appeared to compromise organizational effectiveness, while creating dependencies that would be difficult to terminate without triggering legal challenges and regulatory scrutiny. The discovery of systematic documentation revealed that my isolation from strategic decision-making processes had been deliberately maintained to protect the integrity of defensive preparations and prevent Victoria from recognizing the scope of investigation into her consultation activities. The apparent exclusion from strategic planning had actually been a protective measure designed to enable comprehensive analysis of her influence campaign, while preventing premature confrontation that could trigger coordinated response before defensive strategies were fully developed. External consultation with organizational development specialists had provided independent analysis of operational modifications and their systematic impact on competitive capabilities and organizational effectiveness. These specialists had confirmed that Victoria's consultation recommendations followed patterns consistent with strategic manipulation designed to create control opportunities rather than enhance organizational performance and competitive positioning capabilities. The documentation included comprehensive legal preparation that addressed potential discrimination allegations and regulatory compliance challenges that Victoria could activate in response to resistance to personnel advancement demands. Employment law specialists had developed defensive strategies that would protect personnel evaluation processes while demonstrating systematic application of advancement criteria and professional development standards that exceeded legal requirements for equal opportunity and fair treatment. Human resources consultation had resulted in comprehensive documentation of personnel evaluation processes and advancement criteria that would provide legal protection against discrimination allegations while demonstrating systematic application of professional standards and objective assessment procedures. The documentation had been prepared to address specific vulnerabilities that Victoria's legal preparation could exploit, while maintaining personnel evaluation integrity. Independent analysis of David's qualifications and experience had been conducted through objective assessment procedures that compared his capabilities with established advancement criteria and position requirements. The analysis had confirmed that his current qualifications were insufficient for regional management responsibilities, while identifying specific development areas that would require additional experience and training before advancement would be appropriate based on professional standards and organizational requirements. The strategic preparation materials revealed that Jonathan had anticipated Victoria's escalation tactics and developed response procedures that would address potential disruption of board presentations while maintaining decision-making integrity and professional standards. These procedures included backup presentation materials, alternative communication methods, and systematic documentation of Victoria's behavior that would provide evidence for legal proceedings if coordination escalation required judicial intervention. Communication protocols had been established with board members to ensure coordinated response to potential disruption of strategic presentations while maintaining professional decorum and decision-making effectiveness. These protocols included predetermined signals and response procedures that would enable systematic documentation of inappropriate behavior while protecting the integrity of board deliberations and strategic decision-making processes. The preparation materials included comprehensive analysis of Victoria's strategic positioning and influence campaign that revealed systematic patterns of manipulation and coercion that exceeded professional consultation boundaries and ethical business practices. This analysis would provide foundation for legal proceedings and regulatory compliance activities that would address her systematic compromise of organizational effectiveness for personal advancement objectives. Independent consultation with strategic planning specialists had provided alternative analysis of expansion planning and competitive positioning that validated original strategic recommendations, while identifying modifications that would improve implementation effectiveness and reduce operational vulnerabilities created through Victoria's consultation activities. These alternatives would enable successful expansion initiative while eliminating dependencies on consultation relationships that had been compromised by personal agenda and manipulation tactics. The discovery that defensive preparations had been conducted systematically over multiple months revealed the comprehensive nature of organizational protection that had been developed, while I struggled with isolation and strategic pressure. The apparent powerlessness that had characterized my position had actually been protective environment that enabled thorough preparation for anticipated confrontation while preventing premature triggering of Victoria's escalation tactics. Financial preparation for potential legal challenges had been arranged through discreet consultation with litigation specialists who had experience addressing employment discrimination allegations and organizational manipulation cases. The financial resources and legal expertise had been secured to ensure comprehensive defense capabilities that would match the sophistication of Victoria's strategic pressure campaign and legal preparation activities. Insurance coverage analysis had been completed to ensure adequate protection for organizational liability and legal defense costs that would be required to address potential discrimination claims and regulatory compliance challenges. The coverage had been enhanced through additional policies that would provide comprehensive protection while maintaining organizational financial stability during extended legal proceedings if necessary. The revelation that board presentation activities would occur within framework of comprehensive defensive preparation and coordinated response capabilities transformed understanding of the strategic positioning that had been established to counter Victoria's influence campaign. The presentation would represent opportunity to demonstrate organizational capabilities while exposing the systematic nature of her manipulation tactics through documented evidence and coordinated testimony. Strategic coordination with key personnel throughout organizational structure had been established to ensure systematic documentation of operational changes and performance impacts that could provide evidence of Victoria's systematic compromise of organizational effectiveness. These personnel had been prepared to provide testimony and documentation that would support legal proceedings while maintaining professional standards and organizational integrity. The comprehensive nature of defensive preparation revealed that Victoria's strategic positioning and influence campaign had been recognized and countered through equally systematic analysis and response development that would protect organizational effectiveness while addressing legal vulnerabilities and regulatory compliance requirements. The apparent strategic advantage that she had established through consultation relationship and systematic manipulation had been neutralized through professional investigation and comprehensive defensive preparation. The understanding that months of apparent isolation and powerlessness had actually been protective preparation period for systematic counter-strategy provided foundation for approaching board presentation, with confidence that Victoria's escalation tactics would be met with comprehensive response that would expose her manipulation campaign while protecting organizational integrity and strategic decision-making processes. The coordination of systematic response to Victoria's influence campaign began immediately following my discovery of Jonathan's comprehensive defensive preparation materials. The revelation that professional investigation had been conducted parallel to my growing concerns created opportunity for strategic collaboration that would combine internal operational knowledge with external validation and legal protection. The alliance represented convergence of evidence and expertise that would prove essential for countering the sophisticated nature of Victoria's manipulation tactics. Jonathan's initial briefing regarding defensive strategy development revealed the comprehensive scope of investigation activities that had been conducted discreetly throughout the organization. His analysis had incorporated input from department heads who had observed performance degradation patterns, external consultants who had validated concerns about strategic positioning modifications, and legal specialists who had assessed vulnerabilities created through systematic consultation influence. The multifaceted approach had generated comprehensive understanding of Victoria's methodologies and strategic objectives. The recruitment of board members' support for defensive positioning had required careful diplomatic coordination that balanced transparency about consultation concerns with discretion necessary to prevent premature escalation of confrontation. Board members had been provided with independent analysis of performance degradation patterns and strategic positioning modifications that enabled objective evaluation of consultation effectiveness without appearing to coordinate response to family relationship dynamics or personnel advancement pressures. Chief Financial Officer Patricia Walsh had been instrumental in documenting financial performance impacts attributable to operational modifications implemented through Victoria's strategic consultation. Her analysis had revealed systematic correlation between consultation recommendations and declining profit margins, increased operational costs, and reduced competitive positioning effectiveness. The financial documentation provided quantifiable evidence of organizational harm that exceeded subjective concerns about consultation methodology or strategic approach effectiveness. Technology Director James Morrison had conducted comprehensive analysis of infrastructure modifications and system changes that had been implemented based on Victoria's consultation recommendations. His evaluation had identified systematic patterns of technological degradation that compromised service delivery capabilities, while creating dependencies on external providers who offered inferior performance at reduced cost. The technical analysis provided objective evidence of strategic positioning compromise that affected fundamental organizational capabilities. Marketing Director Susan Chen had documented client relationship impacts attributable to service delivery modifications and operational changes that had been implemented through consultation recommendations. Her analysis had revealed systematic degradation in client satisfaction metrics, reduced retention rates, and declining market positioning effectiveness that correlated directly with specific consultation activities and strategic positioning modifications. The marketing analysis provided comprehensive evidence of competitive positioning compromise. Operations Director Michael Torres had analyzed supply chain modifications and vendor relationship changes that had been implemented based on Victoria's strategic consultation recommendations. His evaluation had identified systematic patterns of service quality degradation, increased operational complexity, and reduced reliability that had affected organizational effectiveness while generating apparent short-term cost savings. The operational analysis provided detailed evidence of systematic compromise of fundamental business capabilities. The coordination of departmental documentation activities had been conducted through discrete communication channels that avoided triggering Victoria's attention, while enabling comprehensive evidence gathering across multiple organizational functions. Each department head had been assigned specific documentation responsibilities that would provide systematic evidence of performance degradation and strategic positioning compromise that could be attributed to consultation recommendations and operational modifications. Independent verification of Victoria's professional credentials had been expanded through systematic investigation of her consultation track record with previous client organizations. Professional networking activities and industry association inquiries had revealed consistent patterns of organizational performance degradation following implementation of her strategic recommendations. The independent verification had been conducted through discrete channels that protected investigative activities from potential discovery. Legal consultation regarding employment discrimination prevention and personnel evaluation documentation had been expanded through engagement with specialized attorneys who possessed extensive experience addressing sophisticated manipulation tactics and strategic coercion within professional consultation relationships. The legal specialists had provided comprehensive analysis of defensive strategies and documentation requirements that would protect organizational integrity while addressing potential regulatory compliance challenges. The development of witness testimony coordination had been conducted through systematic preparation of key personnel who had observed Victoria's consultation activities and their impacts on organizational effectiveness. These witnesses had been prepared to provide detailed accounts of specific incidents, performance degradation patterns, and strategic positioning modifications that would support legal proceedings if Victoria's escalation tactics required judicial intervention to protect organizational integrity. Documentation of Victoria's systematic consultation activities had been expanded through recovery of electronic communications, meeting records, and strategic planning materials that revealed the comprehensive scope of her influence campaign and manipulation tactics. The electronic evidence had been preserved through systematic backup procedures and legal preservation protocols that would ensure admissibility in potential legal proceedings while protecting organizational information security requirements. The preparation of alternative strategic planning materials had been conducted through independent consultation with strategic positioning specialists who possessed expertise in technology sector expansion planning and competitive positioning development. These alternative materials would enable successful board presentation and strategic decision-making processes even if Victoria's escalation tactics succeeded in disrupting original presentation materials or intimidating decision-making participants. Coordination with external professional networks had been established to provide industry validation of strategic expansion planning and personnel evaluation standards that would counter potential allegations of discriminatory practices or inappropriate consultation relationships. Professional association endorsements and industry standard documentation had been secured to provide independent verification of evaluation criteria and advancement requirements that exceeded legal minimums for equal opportunity compliance. The establishment of media relations preparation had been conducted through discreet consultation with public relations specialists who possessed experience managing corporate reputation protection during employment-related disputes and organizational manipulation cases. The media relations strategy had been developed to protect organizational reputation while providing accurate information about strategic positioning and professional standards if public attention resulted from Victoria's escalation tactics. Financial preparation for extended legal proceedings had been coordinated through expansion of insurance coverage and establishment of litigation reserves that would ensure adequate resources for comprehensive legal defense without compromising strategic expansion initiatives or operational effectiveness. The financial preparation had been conducted through discrete channels that avoided alerting Victoria to the scope of defensive preparation activities. The development of regulatory compliance documentation had been expanded through engagement with employment law specialists and regulatory affairs consultants who possessed expertise in discrimination prevention and equal opportunity compliance within technology sector organizations. The compliance documentation had been prepared to exceed regulatory requirements while demonstrating systematic application of professional standards and objective evaluation procedures. Coordination of strategic expansion planning documentation had been conducted through development of comprehensive backup materials and alternative presentation formats that would enable successful board deliberations, even if primary presentation materials were compromised through sabotage or intimidation tactics. The backup preparation had been secured through multiple storage locations and access procedures that would ensure availability during critical decision-making periods. The establishment of post-confrontation protocols had been developed through systematic planning for various escalation scenarios that might result from Victoria's response to resistance of her personnel advancement demands. These protocols included communication procedures, legal response activation, and organizational stability maintenance that would protect strategic initiatives while addressing potential disruption of business operations and competitive positioning activities. Employee communication planning had been developed through discrete coordination with human resources specialists who possessed expertise in managing organizational change during periods of leadership conflict and strategic positioning challenges. The communication strategy had been designed to maintain workforce stability and productivity while providing accurate information about organizational direction and strategic priorities if Victoria's escalation tactics created uncertainty about leadership effectiveness. The coordination of board member testimony and documentation had been conducted through systematic preparation of evidence and witness accounts that would demonstrate Victoria's systematic manipulation tactics and their impacts on organizational effectiveness. Board member participation had been secured through diplomatic coordination that emphasized organizational protection rather than personal confrontation or family relationship dynamics. Client relationship protection protocols had been established through discrete coordination with account management personnel who would maintain service delivery continuity and relationship stability if Victoria's escalation tactics created operational disruption or competitive positioning challenges. The client protection measures had been designed to prevent strategic expansion initiative compromise while maintaining established relationship quality and service delivery standards. The development of competitive intelligence protection had been conducted through information security enhancement and strategic positioning confidentiality that would prevent Victoria from accessing sensitive expansion planning materials that could be exploited for strategic sabotage or competitive intelligence sharing. The security measures had been implemented through discrete modifications to access procedures and information distribution protocols. Vendor relationship stabilization had been coordinated through systematic communication with key suppliers and service providers who would maintain operational support during potential disruption periods resulting from Victoria's escalation tactics. The vendor coordination had been conducted through discrete channels that avoided alerting Victoria to defensive preparation activities while ensuring operational continuity during confrontation periods. The establishment of succession planning protocols had been developed through discrete preparation for potential leadership transitions that might result from extended legal proceedings or strategic positioning challenges created through Victoria's manipulation campaign. The succession planning had been designed to maintain organizational effectiveness while protecting strategic expansion initiatives and competitive positioning activities. This comprehensive alliance building and defensive preparation represented systematic mobilization of organizational resources and external expertise that would prove essential for countering Victoria's sophisticated manipulation tactics. The strategic coordination had been conducted through discrete channels that protected preparation activities while establishing comprehensive response capabilities that would address potential escalation scenarios and protect organizational integrity during anticipated confrontation over personnel advancement decisions and strategic consultation relationships. The opportunity to initiate systematic counter-strategy against Victoria's influence campaign presented itself during the regularly scheduled quarterly board meeting that preceded the Southeast expansion presentation. Jonathan had strategically positioned this meeting as preliminary discussion opportunity that would enable comprehensive documentation of organizational performance issues, while establishing foundation for subsequent presentation of expansion initiative materials. The timing provided optimal circumstances for systematic exposure of consultation-related problems without appearing to coordinate response to family relationship dynamics. The quarterly performance review agenda had been carefully structured to emphasize data-driven analysis of operational effectiveness and competitive positioning metrics that would demonstrate systematic correlation between Victoria's consultation recommendations and declining organizational performance. Each department head had been prepared to present specific evidence of performance degradation patterns while maintaining professional objectivity that avoided personal accusations or emotional confrontation tactics that might compromise credibility. Chief Financial Officer Patricia Walsh initiated the systematic presentation of evidence through comprehensive analysis of financial performance degradation that had occurred following implementation of consultation-recommended operational modifications. Her documentation revealed systematic patterns of declining profit margins, increased operational costs, and reduced competitive positioning effectiveness that correlated directly with specific strategic recommendations and procedural changes that had been implemented under Victoria's guidance. The financial analysis incorporated detailed comparison of performance metrics before and after implementation of consultation recommendations, demonstrating quantifiable evidence of organizational harm that exceeded normal market fluctuation patterns or competitive pressure impacts. Patricia's presentation emphasized systematic correlation between specific consultation activities and negative financial outcomes, while maintaining professional analysis standards that would support legal proceedings if necessary. Technology Director James Morrison followed with comprehensive technical analysis of infrastructure modifications and system changes that had compromised service delivery capabilities and competitive positioning effectiveness. His documentation revealed systematic patterns of technological degradation that had reduced organizational capabilities while creating dependencies on inferior service providers who offered reduced performance standards at lower costs. The technical presentation incorporated detailed performance metrics and system reliability data that demonstrated quantifiable degradation in service delivery capabilities following implementation of consultation-recommended modifications. James emphasized systematic correlation between specific technical changes and operational effectiveness decline, while maintaining objective analysis standards that avoided personal criticism or emotional characterization of consultation activities. Marketing Director Susan Chen presented comprehensive analysis of client relationship impacts and competitive positioning degradation that had resulted from service delivery modifications implemented through consultation recommendations. Her documentation revealed systematic patterns of client satisfaction decline, retention rate reduction, and market positioning effectiveness degradation that correlated directly with operational changes and strategic positioning modifications. The marketing analysis incorporated detailed client feedback data and competitive analysis metrics that demonstrated quantifiable evidence of market positioning compromise following implementation of consultation recommendations. Susan emphasized systematic correlation between specific service delivery changes and client relationship degradation, while maintaining professional analysis standards that focused on organizational impact rather than personal consultation criticism. Operations Director Michael Torres concluded the departmental presentations with comprehensive analysis of supply chain modifications and vendor relationship changes that had compromised operational effectiveness and service quality standards. His documentation revealed systematic patterns of service reliability degradation and operational complexity increases that had affected fundamental business capabilities while generating apparent short-term cost savings. The operational analysis incorporated detailed performance metrics and service quality data that demonstrated quantifiable evidence of capability degradation following implementation of consultation-recommended vendor changes and procedural modifications. Michael emphasized systematic correlation between specific operational changes and effectiveness decline, while maintaining objective analysis standards that supported organizational protection rather than personal confrontation objectives. Board member questions following these presentations revealed growing recognition of systematic patterns that suggested consultation effectiveness problems rather than normal operational challenges or market condition impacts. The questioning focused on correlation analysis and causal relationship assessment that enabled board members to reach independent conclusions about consultation methodology problems without appearing to coordinate response to family relationship dynamics. Chairman William Richardson's synthesis of departmental presentations emphasized systematic nature of performance degradation patterns and their correlation with consultation-recommended modifications to organizational procedures and strategic positioning approaches. His analysis avoided personal criticism while establishing clear recognition that consultation activities had compromised rather than enhanced organizational effectiveness and competitive positioning capabilities. Victoria's response to systematic presentation of evidence revealed sophisticated preparation for defending consultation methodology and strategic positioning recommendations. Her counter-analysis emphasized external market conditions and competitive pressures that could explain performance degradation without acknowledging systematic correlation with consultation activities. The professional quality of her defensive presentation demonstrated strategic preparation for anticipated criticism of consultation effectiveness. Her rebuttal incorporated detailed analysis of industry trends and competitive positioning challenges that provided alternative explanations for organizational performance problems, while minimizing significance of correlation patterns between consultation recommendations and declining effectiveness metrics. Victoria's presentation quality demonstrated professional expertise while revealing defensive preparation that suggested awareness of potential criticism regarding consultation methodology and strategic positioning effectiveness. The systematic nature of Victoria's defensive response revealed comprehensive preparation for addressing performance criticism while maintaining consultation authority and credibility with board members who had relied on her strategic expertise for expansion planning and competitive positioning decisions. Her defensive strategy incorporated sophisticated analysis and professional presentation quality that exceeded spontaneous response capabilities and suggested advanced preparation for anticipated confrontation. Jonathan's presentation of independent consultation analysis provided external validation of internal performance assessment and correlation analysis between consultation recommendations and organizational effectiveness degradation. The independent analysis had been conducted by strategic positioning specialists with technology sector expertise who possessed no connection to organizational personnel or family relationship dynamics that might compromise analytical objectivity. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.